So the second question is sketching the graph of y equals to 2 sine of 2x. So the procedure is the same. We have to find our amplitude first. Even if someone asks you or not, you just have to not say that has to be found. So amplitude is equals to this coefficient of sine, which is the positive value, which is 2, and the period is equals to 2 pi over b modulus of b. So in this case, the value of b is simply this coefficient here of x, which is 2. So we have 2 pi over 2, which is equals to pi. And pi in degrees is 180 degrees. The moment you find scale, you move to, the moment you find period, you move to scale. Scale is equals to period divided by 4. And the period in this case is 180 degrees divided by 4. And this is going to give us 45 degrees. Next is the shift. Do we have the vertical shift here? Vertical shift is equals to 0. We have, this hasn't been shifted. You can see plus 0 there. The constant value there is 0. And then since the vertical shift is 0, the midline is following the shift here. So when your vertical shift is 0, meaning that your midline here, the values of y, the middle value is y equals to 0. That's a line that we have to use. From this line, y equals to 0, you move the amplitude steps out. You move 2 steps upwards and 2 steps downwards. And then you also need to know, like, where are you starting from along the x-axis? So here you have 2x. So you have 2x here, your first shift. First shift, let's check if at all this has been shifted. So you get 2x equated to 0. X is equals to, so the moment x is equals to 0, it simply means that this graph hasn't been shifted to the left or to the right. It is starting at x equals to 0. So no phase shift. So then once there is no phase shift, it is starting at x equals to 0. So we know our starting lines to say y equals to 0 and x equals to 0. So we start sketching. Okay, so we start sketching. If you want, you can even find the shift direct here. So we can find what's happening to this thing. So you can even find your range if you want. Your range here is equals to vertical shift minus amplitude, comma, vertical shift plus amplitude. That's how you find your range. You can find it direct here or you can find it when you start sketching. So your vertical shift is 0 here. Your amplitude is 1. Your amplitude is 2. So you're going to have negative 2, comma, 2. That is going to be your range. So let's start sketching our graph. I've always been emphasizing that I prefer starting with the x or y plane. So that is my y, and that is my 0 there, my x or y plane. Now I'll move to the values. My starting point along the x-axis. My midline is y equals to 0. So my midline is y equals to 0. So this is the line. This is the line y equals to 0. This is my midline. Y equals to 0. Next, from this line y equals to 0, I have to move the amplitude, number of this amplitude steps. So 2 steps upwards and 2 steps downward from the midline. So if my midline is here at 2, 2 plus 2, it is 2 minus 2, I have minus 2. That's why you have that range, which is negative 2 to 2. So the values cannot exceed. Your graph is not supposed to exceed negative 2 and 2. Now that I have the values of y which I'm using, which is 2, 0, and negative 2. Now I move to the x-axis. Where am I starting from along the x-axis? So I'm starting at x equals to 0 as my first value. Since my first value is x equals to 0, this is the line. This is the line x equals to 0. So now this is where I'm starting from. So I need to know the values that I'm going to use. So from this 0 to the next value, from this to the next value, to the next value, to the next. You can even add as many values as you want. You just have to make sure that you are following the interval that is given. So like this, like that. Then I can even extend it to the left side, like that. So if I'm starting here at 0 degrees, from 0 degrees to the next value, I have to look at my scale. What is my scale? My scale is 45 degrees. So now I have to start incrementing by 45. 0 plus 45, it will be 45. 45 plus 45, 90. 90 plus 45, that's 135. 135 plus 45. 135 plus 35, that's 180. And then 180 plus 35, that's 225. 235. 225 plus 45 degrees, that's 270. And then you can extend it and proceed just like that. So that's what you are expected to do on that question. So make sure that you understand your scale very well. Upon understanding your scale, you know to say from this point to the next, how many values should you leave in between. So now, this side you can do the same. So meaning that from 0 to be negative 45, you can add the other values, negative 90 and so on. So this is our starting line. This line and that line. We are starting at this line here. So we have to ask ourselves, are we starting at 0, 0? Are we starting at 0, 2 or 0, negative 1? We go to our question. Since our question here is sine, as long as it's sine, you have to start at the middle. So the middle here is this point here. That is your starting point. So from this point now, we can either move to this point or to that point. But what determines is the value, the coefficient here. If it is positive, you are going upwards. If it is negative, you are reflecting it downwards. So since it is positive, will be here. The next value will be on this line to be 90,0, 135, negative 2, and then there. So if I attempt to sketch this, it will be like this. So you can see this is a complete circle. So this is a complete circle, which is 180 degrees. If I tell you you have to go back to your period, to the period that we found, a period here is 180, meaning that at every 180, you're going to have a complete circle. So we have already achieved our complete circle here, but we can extend this. Can extend this graph like that, like that. Can go on and on. Even on the other side here, you can, from here, you can be here on that line, that value there. This is going to be negative 90, negative 135. So it will be there, there. Extend it even on the left side. So if your graph required you to just restrict it to 90, negative 90 and 90 degrees, meaning that it would have been from this point to that point, and then from this point, the line was supposed to be broken. So don't get scared about the interval. You just do the normal way. After you've done the normal way, just those values that are not in the interval, please, you may just draw the broken lines of the, draw the broken lines. So that's about that case which is there. So we move to the second one. The second equation now, we need to shift our graph. So we have C, which is y equals to 2 minus 2 sine of 2x minus 90 degrees. So this graph here, we start, procedure is the same. Let's find our A, which is amplitude. So our amplitude here is equals to this coefficient of sine, the positive value here, which is 2. So we use negative modulus of negative 2. Say this is equals to 2. That is our period, our amplitude. Period is equals to 2 pi over b. Over b is always positive. So we have 2 pi over b is 2 here. The coefficient of this coefficient of x is 2. So we have pi. So I like using degrees. So I'll go with 180 degrees. Next, the scale, very important. The scale is equals to period divided by 4. So it's 180 degrees over 4, which is equals to 45 degrees. So we continue. So y is equals to 2 minus 2 sine of 2x minus 90 degrees. So we already said the amplitude is equals to, which is equals to 2. So the moment, okay, so this is what we have. So this is what we found here. The values, amplitude 2, scale 45, period 180, vertical shift 2 steps upwards, midline, the very important, y equals to 2. It's coming from this constant value here. And then phase shift is coming from getting that piece there, equating it to 0. And so for x, we got 45. Since it's positive, that's why we are saying to the right. If this was negative, we would have said 45 to the left. And then the value of x that you get here, that's where your graph is going to start at, along the x, along the x values. And then the y values will be at y equals to 2. So y equals to 2. My y equals to 2 is my midline. That is my midline. So I have to draw that line there to show that that is where I'm going to, that is my midline. Y is equals to 2. Next, since my midline is, am I starting at x equals to 0 here as I've always been starting or not? The case here has changed because of the shift. It has been shifted by 45. So I'm starting at x equals to 45. So I have to go to where 45 degrees is. So this is 45 degrees. This 45 degrees is not coming from the scale, please. This 45 is coming from the shift. The graph has been shifted by 45 steps. So this is the line that I have now, my new line, and that line. Those are my line that I have to use. So now, let me finish up with the x, the y-axis. So this is my midline. How far should I go upwards? You got your amplitude. Our amplitude is 2. So 2 plus 2, it will end there at 4. And then 2, we move 2 steps upwards from the midline and 2 steps downwards. So when you move 2 steps downwards, we'll be here at 0. So along the y-axis, the value that we are using are as follows: 4, 2, and 0. Just these three values. These are the values that we are using along the y-axis. We moved now to the x-axis. Starting from, this is the starting point now. You always increment starting from your starting point. So our starting point along the x-axis here, it is starting at x equals to 45. So from 45 to the next value, you go to your scale. You go back to your scale to say, this is my starting point now. From this 45 to the next, what should be the value? So the scale here is 45. So we are like in this case, we have 45 degrees. So 45 degrees. So 45 plus 45, the next value is 90. The next value 45, 135. And then the next value is going to be 180. You people can extend it just like that. And then this is now the line that we are using. So meaning that your graph can either start at that point, or at this point. So please pay attention on this one. We are no longer using this because it has been shifted. It's no longer at x equals to 0, but x equals to 45. That's why we are starting here along this line. So now, are we starting at the middle? Are we starting there? Are we starting there? What determines is what we have. If it is sine, sine always starts at the middle. So since it is sine, we are starting at that point. If it is cosine, you could either started there or started there, depending with if it was positive, you start there. If it is negative, you start downwards. But for sine, regardless of it being sine, negative or positive, you always have to start at the middle. Next, movement now. Are you supposed to go at 90,4 or are you supposed to be at 90,0? You go back to the sine. This value here, it's having the coefficient, the sign of this function is -2 sine. So sine here is negative. So negative is telling us that it has to be reflected. So after establishing the midpoint, we are not going to go at that point. We are coming downwards because of it being negative. So from that point, the next value is 135 against 2. Then 180 against 4 there. And then for 180 plus 45, what are we getting? 225, right? So 225 on that line, like that. Can extend it. So now my sketching starts here. That's where I started from, coming downwards, like that, like that. So this is just a sketch, so you can extend. You keep increasing your values by 45. So from this point here, I note that the next value would have been there at 4. And then the other value would have been here at 45, negative 90. I can extend from there 0, then on this line, and then this part here. I can extend this graph like that. So this is about the graph of sine that has been shifted. So any question on this part? So if I tell someone, so using the graph, if I tell someone is asking, say, find the value of y equals to, this function is 2 minus 2 sine of, the graph is what? Sine of 2x minus 90. And then someone on the part of y here, someone puts a value to say 2y is equals to 2, meaning that here y is 2. So draw a line here. This is the line. Where is it touching the graph? So there's that point there, find the value of x. And that point, find the value of x. That point, find the value of x. That point, find the value of x. So that's how you use the graph. If at all someone puts a 4 there, you would draw a line where there is 4, like that. And then you start picking the values where you start picking the value of x, where this line y equals to 4 and the curve are intersecting. So here at 4, you have at that point there, the value of x is 0. And then at that point there, the value of x is 180. So you can use the graph just like that. If someone puts a 0 here, say 0 here, y equals to 0, you also draw a line where y equals to 0 is and pick the values where your y equals to 0 line and the curve are intersecting. So that's about that piece there, unless there is a question before we move to cosine. Okay, actually, let me move to cosine first. Let me move to cosine.
Madam, I have a question.
I'm looking at time because I want this to end. I want to end this. We only have 7 minutes.
Okay.
So let me just say, So we move to cosine. So I'll just follow the same pattern. So cosine, we have y is equals to cos of x. So the procedure is the same. All the way we're finding the values for sine, amplitude, what and what, is the same even under this part here. So let me not even waste time to go back to that. Let me use 2 minus 2 cos of, let's say, x minus 90 degrees. Let me put plus 90 degrees as not the one that I've put. Plus 2 like this. So here we start with our amplitude. Our amplitude here is equals to modulus of 2 of negative, which is 2. Period is equals to 2 pi over b, and the value of b in this case is 1, as you can see there. So we have 2 pi equals to 360 degrees. Next, we move to scale. Scale is equals to 360 degrees divided by 4, which is 90 degrees. And then do we have a vertical shift here? Vertical shift is equals to 2 upwards. Once you find the vertical shift, move to the midline. Midline is equals to y equals to this constant here. If it was -2 here, we would have said -2, but it's 2, we're just saying 2. And then phase shift, you just solve this equation here. 90, equate this to 0, and you're going to have x is equals to negative 90 degrees. So x is starting at negative 90 degrees, but when it comes to writing phase shift, it is distance. So we'll just say 90 degrees to the left. So now we have two starting points. We have y, the midline is y equals to 2, and this value of x, it has been shifted, our graph has been shifted by 90 steps to the left side. So instead of starting at x equals to 0, in this case, we'll start at x equals to negative 90 degrees. So let me sketch the graph. First thing first is the x or y plane. So x or y plane, we have x, we have y there. And then what is our midline? Y equals to 2. So y equals to 2. Y equals to 2 is somewhere there precisely. That is our midline. And then next, the values of x here, where are they starting from? X equals to negative 90 degrees. So I have to go where negative 90 degrees is. So negative 90 degrees, I can say it's somewhere here. This is negative 90 degrees. So I have to establish a line there. So my midpoint here, it is this part here. This is my mid. This is my midpoint. It is this line where it has the shifted line, and that line. So the mid is that point there. So now that I have this part and that part, let me finish with the y-axis. The coordinates that I have to use along the y-axis, we have the amplitude, which is 2. So it will be 2 plus 2 is 4. So it will be at 4, and then 2 step downwards, it will be at 0. So we have the values of y that we're using as follows: 4, 2, and 0. So what about the values of x? So you have to go to your starting point. This is the most important, negative 90. So from negative 90, you start increasing by what? By the scale. Your scale here is 90 degrees. So let's suppose the graph was shifted by 45. It was x equals to negative 45. So this would have been negative 45 degrees. So from this negative 45 degrees, you start incrementing by 90. So it would be negative 45 plus 90 going this side. So it would have been, the first value would have been here at 45. Then the next value just like that. So don't think that every time it will just be as smooth as you are seeing it today. So in our case, it is at negative 90 degrees. Let me use negative 90. And then I start incrementing by 90. So negative 90, going this side, it will be negative 90 plus 90, so it will be 0 degrees. So this it will be at 0 degrees. 0 degrees plus 90, it will be 90 degrees. 90 degrees plus 90, 180. 180 plus 90, 270. 270 plus 90, 360 degrees. So now I have to start now sketching. So I have to ask myself, am I starting at this point? Am I starting at that point? Or am I starting at this point? Well, these are the three values that we are using of y. 1, 2, 3 along this line here. That's the starting point. So you go back to your function. Is it cosine or is it sine? Since it is cosine here, cosine can either start at the far end there or down here. It can't start at the middle. It's only sine that starts at the middle. So cosine can start here or there. So what determines it starting there or here is simply what? The sign. If it is carrying negative, it has to start downwards. So in this case, it is negative here, negative 2. So it has to start downwards. That's why the first point here, it will be here. But if it was positive 2, it would have started there. So it can only start there or here. It will never start at the middle. So from this point, negative 90, 0, comma, it will be 0, comma 2 on that. So it will be on that line. The next value is going to be 90. Right then, it's 90 degrees, not 95. So 0 degrees, next is 90 degrees. So 90 degrees, comma, which other value? You have to follow all the values of y. 0, from 0, you move to 2. From 2, it's 4. So we are done with 2. We are moving now to that point there. Then 180, it will be there. Then 270, it will be here. And then, so if I tell you to look at this is a complete circle. So this is a complete circle. If you were to add 270 plus 90 degrees, you get 360.